In this interview, I'm speaking to Australian magician, presenter and magic coach, Mr. Timothy Hyde. Mr. Timothy Hyde.
Peter.
Good morning for you, good evening for me. Are you well?
I'm very well. It's 8 o'clock on a very overcast Blue Mountains morning here.
So whereabouts are you?
I live in the Blue Mountains, so that's if you're in Sydney, Australia, and you drive due west for about an hour and a half, you will get to the Blue Mountains. That's where we live.
Because I was recently in Sydney, and I can see why people move there.
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I'm sorry I missed you when you were down.
Yeah, no, but you were busy, and that's kind of one of the reasons I'm talking to you, because you're a busy man. And I'm just going to sort of explain how I know about you, because you are on the other side of the world, and within the sort of general sort of world of magic, I would imagine you are quite happy with a degree of anonymity, as it were. Because I know you're very well known in Australia and in the Southern Hemisphere, but in the UK there might be a few guys who haven't read your stuff, seen your stuff yet, who really should do, in my opinion. I found you through Google when I was looking for speaking as a magician, keynote speaking, because you have a magic coach publication out called Magically Speaking, which is excellent, which is very, very good indeed. And I downloaded it. I have it. I printed it out. I went through all the things, and because that's an area that I'm very interested in. But you also have a lot of other stuff. I've also got your Hunter's Knot routine, which, being a trade show worker, is. I mean, I knew the Hunter's Knot, but I'd never really seen it as a big thing. And I just love that way you think about taking something so simple and just saying, well, actually, it's a street performer in you, I think, that did that.
Yeah.
Saying, how are we going to pull people in, So that's how I know you. I mean, at the moment, how would you describe what you have as a career now? Who are you as in terms of what do you do now?
Well, I try to fly a little bit under the radar. I'm just a worker. I do my stuff, but I've published a few of my ideas and things. Most of my work at the moment, I do a bit of cruise ship work, which is booming again down here. There's a lot of ships down. There's usually one or two cruise ships every day in Sydney Harbour. So I'm just dabbling in that again. I've done it a few times. I can talk more about that maybe later on, but the cruise ship work. And I do a lot of MC work is my kind of main bread and butter probably now. I have a few clients who use me for their conferences, and I do a bit of magic, bit of mentalism incorporated in that. So that's my kind of unique approach to being an MC. So that's most of my work. I do a few one-off parties, more corporate events, but that side is kind of faded away a little bit now. So.
Okay. I mean, what was interesting for me when I sort of look back through what you've done is you, as I did, was a busker. You were a street performer. Do you look back on those days with fondness?
I do a bit, yeah. I grew up in New Zealand, and where there was one magic shop in Christchurch. So, you didn't really meet and hang out with many other magicians, but I had an interest in magic. My grandfather did a bit of magic, and my dad knew one trick, and so I sort of was quite keen, and I taught myself to juggle, but I hadn't actually ever seen any other jugglers or street performers, magic street performers. So what I developed was a little bit different from the classic mold of street performers that you see today. Tried it out in New Zealand a couple of times, and then came to Sydney and busked for about 2 years on Circular Quay. So yeah, no, it was fun times.
And I mean, do you think it stood you in good stead? It's always, people, because people sort of, a lot of magicians are terrified of the street. because they see it as a real training ground. Did you see it as something that benefited you as a performer?
Yeah, the stuff I learnt then, I still do. There's a couple of routines that I developed on the street. I used to do um, a note in the orange trick, like a bill in the lemon, the Americans would say. So it was a note in an orange, but I used to incorporate it into a juggling routine. So it was taking some money and giving them a receipt back from the corner of it, and then the note would vanish, and I would say, "Oh, I'll teach you how to juggle." So they would juggle with 3 oranges, and then we'd chop one up, and there was the note back. So, but then I used that same routine when I started. I transitioned from busking into stand-up comedy. I worked at the Comedy Store, and so I then used that same routine, but I related it to my busking days. So told some stories about the busking, and then told that story with the oranges.
So do you? I mean, it's an interesting thing that when you go indoors from being a street performer, it's nice to be able to sort of almost look back over your shoulder and refer back to it, because it does distinguish you, I think, as a performer, doesn't it? To be able to say, I did that, and people do still have this kind of romantic view of street performing, I think.
Yeah, I met lots of people. It was a nice way to meet also some of the other performers, and it was kind of my in. I became a working stand-up comedy, but at the same time I met some of the real worker guys who were doing the kids parties and the banquets and things like that in that sort of environment. And so you can make more money doing kids parties than you can doing stand-up comedy. It's the sort of, unless you're the 1% who are going to really make it. So I kind of had parallel careers there.
So when because then you went into the corporate market, you did a double act, you married, and your wife became part of your illusion. You did an illusion act, is what I'm trying to get to. You so you kind of done everything in terms of magic. You've covered all bases really in terms of magic.
Yeah, I've only ever worked one restaurant. I've never done walk around stuff. Close up magic's not really my thing. I do about 5 routines really well for close up, and that's it. So, I mean, I can do a 2 hours at a walk around gig if I wanted to, as long as there was a lot of people.
Right.
But I've never done restaurants. I've never done that sort of sphere that a lot of magicians tend to do. So, but yeah, we did. So the kids show became bigger. Started doing shopping centres and things like that. Some big festivals, and then basically got a contract at a theme park, Australia's Wonderland, which is the largest theme park in the southern hemisphere. And we worked there for 2 years. So it was an illusion show, working with Yogi, which was quite fun. And it was a great show. And 3 illusions. We did a broom suspension, or it was like a pole suspension. Did it slightly differently, as incorporated into the juggling. So I used to spin plates on sticks, and then I'd put Linda up on the stick. So it was quite nice. Yeah, and then we did a sword box, which I used to go in. But Linda shoved all the broomsticks through it, and a zigzag to finish, and a couple of interactive things in between. So 30 minutes, bam, bam, bam. 3 times a day.
Years, twice a day, however long. So
yeah, nice. 3 times a day on the weekends and school holidays, and then
So it was very tight. No fat on that show by the end of the 2 years, I shouldn't imagine.
No fat on me either.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, though, isn't it? That's the way to get a slick act, is to do it over and over and over again.
Yeah, no, I love that, and that's I see myself as a polisher of routines. I'm not. I mean, I love my creative thinking stuff, but I tend to, my creativity is in polishing something I've got and making it better and better, chopping out more than I put into it. So that's my strength.
Yeah, I
So it
think
was fun.
it's going with the creativity stuff. It's interesting because I mean, one of the things when I first sort of discovered you online is that you're one of the few, you're one of the first magicians I saw who was actually putting stuff out that was along the creativity side, because you've got a whole thing on creativity. I mean, you do creativity workshops, you do a lot of stuff with businesses in terms of you know what I'm saying is you're one of the first magicians I saw who went to the corporate market saying, here is something specific about creativity and magic. And how did that all come about? I mean, how did you sort of
I I got sick of going into hotels and convention centers through the loading dock.
right?
So I kind of thought, well, that was one of the things. I wanted to have a different thing to sell into that market. I started working through some of the speaker bureaus, and I saw that was kind of my introduction into the world of the professional speaker, and I saw what the guys were selling into the corporate market, and thought, this sounds good.
And do you enjoy that side? I mean, do you enjoy the the presenting side in terms of standing up and teaching, as it were? Because that's what essentially you do as a keynote speaker, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I trained as a teacher.
Right.
I come from that background. When I left school, for the want of something better to do, I went to teachers training college, and I trained as a primary school teacher, and trained for 3 years and taught for 2 years. So that was sort of my background, but that wasn't my passion. It was sort of, I wanted to perform, and going to training as a teacher, we did drama and theatre sort of 1 day a week. We did music for another day a week. So that's really what I wanted to do. But I'm coming a full circle now. But the speaking is interesting because people, and you just said it then, it's people tend to think of it as keynote is professional speaking. If you are a professional speaker or a motivational speaker, you do keynotes, but it's so much broader than that. And when you get into it, you realize that there's a whole lot of other niches within. It's like if somebody hears you're a magician, they think, oh, well, he does shows, but in reality, you could be doing close-up or walk around, trade shows, school shows. So within the professional speaking, there's a whole lot of little niches. So you can be doing your keynotes, you can be doing breakouts, you can be doing coaching, you can be doing training, you can be doing workshops. So my speciality within the speaking is the MC work. So that's probably half of my business now. And some workshops. So I tend my next one, which is my second assignment away, and it's in a couple of weeks. It's a 90-minute session with a group of, I think, 12 guys, IT guys. It's a kind of a kickoff for the year. I'm going to go in. We're going to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to give them a few exercises and get their brains going and thinking outside the square, looking at things in different ways, and tell them a few stories, paint a few pictures in their head.
Okay, and so I mean, do you, as I say, do you enjoy that? Do you use magic in that? Or is it now about I'm a magician and I'll talk to you about creativity, or is it kind of I'm a magician, I'll show you some magic stuff as well as teach you about creativity? I mean, what's your approach with it? It's
a bit of both. I kind of use the premise thinking like a magician.
Yeah.
So which gives me the freedom to do whatever I want.
That's a good way of looking at it. I mean,
yeah.
One of the other things, other than being a busker, which you were at one point, the other thing that you have in common with me, which I don't know you know about, is that you also you do the 100-day challenge, don't you? You're a fan of the 100-day challenge.
I have done it. I have done the 100-day challenge.
Yeah, so you know Gary Ryan Blair, and his delivery is a little off, but it's a great challenge, isn't it? I mean, how did you come about that? I mean, are you quite a sort of self-motivated guy, or do you have to do?
Yeah, no, I'm I need systems a bit.
Yeah.
I kind of like having systems of. I've got a lot of stuff going on up here.
Yeah.
But I like to follow through. I find I work better, and if I'm, I'm a bit sort of manic, so I have my good days and my bad days, and on the bad days, it's nice to be able to, grab your book and say, well, this is what I'm doing today. I've got it kind of a little bit mapped out. You get on with that and get through to lunchtime, and then do it again in the afternoon.
Actually, because the systems thing's really interesting to me because I'm fascinated by systems. I'm a little bit obsessive about these kind of things, which doesn't come across in the way I talk because I'm all over the place. I've got like the same as you probably a million things going on in my head. But I mean, do you just in terms of what you've done, and this is personal interest for me really. What do you sort of rate as being? I mean, are you a GTD guy? Are you a Dave Allen fan?
Yeah, look, I've got Dave Allen stuff. It's too complicated for me.
I agree.
So yeah, I tell you what I like. Do you know Zen to Done?
Yeah, Leo Babauta.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got the Less is More book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few different ones that he's got, and I actually use some elements of that in my workshop. So if they want a little bit on product, I can do a whole day with in a workshop setting.
Yeah.
So if a client comes and says, we want some team building or stuff, I can say, well, how long have you got? Have you got 60 minutes? You do it as a keynote. Have you got half a day or a full day? I've got little modules that I can do, and I will use some of Leo's stuff. It's open source. He's said, feel free to use it. So I do.
And it's great. So if anyone's listening, it's Zen Habits is the name of the website, and
yeah,
he's also got because he runs a site on minimalism as well, which I'm a big fan of. So it's Zen to Done.
There it is.
That's right, because that's the book, isn't it? That came out before the book, isn't it? Because the book is The Power of Less.
Okay.
Is the book, which is they won't see that, but there we go. I've got a copy of that. That's The Power of Less. That's the Zen to Done was the original sort of open source thing, and then this was his published book. But I mean, just to sort of clarify for anyone who's listening to this, thinking what they're talking about, it's a website called Zen Habits. The guy's called Leo Babauta, I think that's how you pronounce it, and it's kind of a simplified version of the Getting Things Done time management system, isn't it? It's much easier for most performers. I should imagine it's the better option because you don't have to have 365 envelopes or files sitting on your desk to tell you what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I read through the David stuff, and it was very interesting, and I could see it happening. But I'm more of a pen and paper. I'm a notebook guy,
right? Rather
than a computerized sort of. I love my iPad and things, but I haven't kind of moved completely onto it yet. So
in terms of what you do this creativity stuff, you're working a lot of different things. I mean, do you tend to go from day to day? Or are you fairly well organised? Are you an organised kind of guy, or are you look organised from behind you? It looks all nicely and organised. And
I spent all no. I'm sort of organised. I'll tell you the story. I can't show you the rest of my office because 3 days ago our house got flooded.
Oh.
We had these huge storms here in the Blue Mountains and hailstorm and we had evil black water came through the lower story. So we've been spending 3 days moving everything up here. So
you're surrounded. It looks nice and calm and serene there, but if we panned out, there would be it's chaos.
Panned out, it's utter mess. Utter mess.
Great stuff. That's
I'm a fairly organised. Kind of goal setting is important. I like to, I've got what I want to achieve this year.
Yeah.
And I have a list of that's printed on my computer, and I print that out, have it sitting on the desk, and then what I want to achieve in the month, the week and the day.
And do you think, I mean, just in terms of what, because I know you, sorry, I'm just going to shift my seat out of the way. Do you think in terms of, because you have this Magic Coach site as well. I mean, do you think that the whole organisation and the planning is something that a lot of performers miss the opportunity with? I mean, because you must have dealt with a lot of performers, and we are quite an unorganised bunch, aren't we? Really. Or is it an individual choice? Do you think? Do you think it's just down to?
I think it's an individual choice. I like to keep moving forwards. I get bored, I think. So I've kind of done different things, and probably in 2 years' time I'll be doing something different. But I mean, I've always been happy what I've done. I could have stopped when I was doing what I thought was a fantastic kindergarten show, and going up. I thought it was the best kindergarten show on the market, and it was great. And I'd probably be still quite comfortably, probably earning as much money as I am now. But and then the shopping centre show and the theme park show, I could have stopped at any point. But I like to kind of say, I want to try a little bit more, push the bar up a bit more.
And just I think it's completely the right approach. I mean, I certainly, the guys that a lot of the guys that I've spoken to have always been. There's always been that sort of thing about keep moving forward and keep, because it's endless possibilities, aren't there? Really, let's face it. And
yeah, indeed. There's I like to work less. I'm fairly lazy, so have you listened to the new Leonard Cohen album?
No,
there's a line in there. I'm a lazy bastard living in a suit, which is
okay. But I mean, they also have to say, going back to the David Allen getting things done, he also said he's the laziest bloke in the world, which is why he's one of the most organised. So the more organised you get, the more time you have to do the things you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I keep putting my fee up.
Right.
And working less, so I've got more time to do other things. So I've got a lot of hobbies, a lot of other things I like doing. So I work less now, but I get more money for each assignment.
Which is it's kind of the ideal way to work, because you can deliver. I mean, I think it's about delivering value. If you deliver it once a month, then it's worth it, isn't it? If you're going out and doing 6 shows a week, and you're looking exhausted and not delivering a great product, then it's fairly detrimental for everybody, isn't it, really? So.
Yeah.
So how do you, we're talking about the cruise ships, how do you cope with the sort of monotony of cruise ships then? If you're a fairly active person,
I'm always amazed when I go on cruise ships and some of the other performers say that they're bored out of their brains, and sort of, I don't have enough time even on a cruise ship. I've got reading and a bit of writing to do, and I've got bird watching to do, and reading about the places I'm going and what I'm going to do when I get to the port. And I'm flat out. I'm exhausted when I come back from a cruise ship.
You need a holiday.
I need a holiday. But I've done cruises a lot, and I started as a young lad, and sort of back in the 80s. There was three or four Russian ships used to come down for the summer, and a company here would sort of sublease them and fill them up, and some of them were party boats, so they were 18 to 35-year-old cruisers, and lots of stand-up comedy and lots of drinking and wild times.
And
so I did those.
Have you kind of progressed that career in the cruise ships then? Are you kind of, I mean, have you got the Sydney Harbour tied up? Is that are you the?
No, it's I mean, a lot of the guys, a lot of the professionals in Australia, a good proportion of them will work on the cruise ships now, because there's a lot of work, and they're short cruises. They tend to be contracts of about a week, and so you will either sail from Sydney up into the South Pacific, Fiji, Tonga, Noumea, great ports, or they will fly you to New Zealand and you'll work around there, and you can go further afield, but the bulk of the work for the Australian guys is around the South Pacific. That being said, some people go a lot further, and I did a cruise through from Hong Kong up to into China through Shanghai last few months back, so it was fun.
So
But it's
do you enjoy the cruises then? I mean, because
oh
it's
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's good, and well, you've got fantastic audiences. They're there to have a party. They there to enjoy themselves. So unlike, say, a corporate audience who maybe, they're just there having dinner at the end of a conference, they're not really expecting a magician to come on and that's it, entertain me. So the audiences are great, the theatres are well set up, and the industry's booming at the moment. It was once kind of thought of. There was an article a couple of weeks back about stand-up comedy on cruise ships, and it was kind of always looked as on for the last 10, 20 years, if you worked on cruise ships you must have been a bit of a dud. But now the cruise ships are putting a lot of money into getting top line comedians onto the ships, and hopefully that's going to spread into the magic side as well.
So have you managed to? Do you do because I know there's a sort of a speaking circuit on the ships as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there's I can't think of the name of it. The enhancement sort of program. They don't get paid. That's the problem. In fact, some lines will actually charge them to go on. So they're basically getting a cheap holiday. So they pay X amount a day, but they can sell back of the room stuff,
right,
and make money from that. So. The kind of a lecture series. Yeah. So a lot of speakers do that.
So in terms of the cruises, I mean, how did you were you quite? I was going to use the word strategic in getting on the cruises, or again, was that something that you just you happened and it grew organically for you, or did you say, right, no, this year I'm going to do cruises?
Yeah, but basically I did that bunch early on when it was basically when I was doing stand up. So I did that for a couple of years and maybe did about 8 cruises. Then about 10 years later, Linda and I did some together, and we worked on like the top of the line ships, Crystal Symphony and Silver Seas and things. So they were 5-star ships. We basically did that because they were going to interesting places.
Right.
We did a fantastic cruise around India, which is somewhere I've always wanted to go. So we went on a ship and visited various ports, and I've done Silver Sea. Crystal was the number one big liner, and Silver Sea is sort of the number one small cruise ship.
So did you specifically? I mean, because there'll be people who kind of who will listen to this and will think, well, how do you get into cruise ships? How do you do it? I mean, did you create specific marketing material for the cruise ships, or did you already have an in, or were you quite sort of deliberate about it?
I was, that kind of just happened. That was more a recommendation through a dear friend of mine. Introduced me to somebody who was booking at that level, so okay. I got in. I had an in there, and but the last I'm kind of in my third era of cruise ships at the moment, and that was a deliberate. I asked around who the agent was, who was. I don't want to be travelling too much, but he does a lot of the work out of it, Australia, and so we're building up a relationship with him. But yeah, I targeted him.
So again, it was quite a deliberate thing to choose that. That was on your 2011, 2012 agenda to do.
Yeah,
that.
It was Plan B actually. It was because Plan A. Yeah, it was Plan B because the global financial crisis sort of hit my business pretty hard.
Yeah.
With a lot of corporate stuff, so I kind of, I started activating Plan B, and cruise ships was part of that. But I'm pleased.
Good. I mean, it's quite interesting.
A lot of fun.
You clearly think a lot about. I mean, you've been doing this a long time, and you think a lot about just to say you've got Plan A, Plan B, or you've got other things that you've kind of assessed what's possible and what's out there, I think makes you quite unique in terms, but just in terms of, there's an awful lot of magicians who do. This is one of the problems I have with not magicians in general, but with this idea that you'll just go through and see what happens, and there's very little forward planning by people, and there's very little consideration of what other possibilities are out there. And you've done so many different things with the writing, with the coaching, with the talking, and it's all, you've stood back and looked at it, is what I'm saying. And
yeah, and they all sort of feed off each other as well. So a lot of the stories and things that I tell are related to the work, and my MC work goes hand in hand with the creative thinking thing. So and vice versa. Like sometimes I'll get booked to be an MC, and in discussions with the client or in the briefing session, I'll see that they have some space in the program and that they're after something, so I can offer another show. I can say, well, would you like me to do a workshop or a keynote, and vice versa. If somebody comes in and says, do you want to, they're after an after dinner performance, and I'll say, well, what's it for? And they say it's a conference. I say, well, have you got an MC? I can come in and MC the whole thing, tie it all together, and do my show, and give you a nice price for the whole thing. So it's a package. Bundle it up as a package. Kind of thing.
And all of this stuff is, I have to say, you've got all of this stuff well represented online as well. I mean, you're on top of that side of things as well. I
got onto the internet pretty early on, so I sort of I'm kind of keen on technology, and I'm well spread around the internet. I've got a lot of websites, and they all kind of feed each other a little bit.
What was the Magic Coach thing? Because I get the Magic Coach newsletter coming through. What was the sort of the idea behind the Magic Coach? Was that to coach magicians, or was that?
Yeah, it started. I think it was in 1999, and I was. I boldly claim it was the first regular sort of magic marketing newsletter, weekly one, but who knows? It started out as a newsletter for what's on in Australian magic, right. And so that was coming out kind of weekly or like Alan Watson's Magic NZ. Do you know that?
I don't get it. I mean, I tend to not. I mean, Magic Week, which is Duncan Trillo's website, is I check in on there every now and then, but I don't tend to.
Yeah.
To get
So it was an email thing, and then at some point I just started adding a few sort of hints and tips, and I kind of thought, hang on, this could be bigger. So I split it off into two. It was regular as clockwork for about 4 years, and now I don't do it for the money. It's not a money making thing really. It's more I like to get ideas on paper. So
yeah. And within it, you do. Presumably you have a reasonable sized list then at the end of 4 years of doing it, because, and also because when you do offer you do point people in some useful directions. You've just sort of been not marketing, but suggesting. You suggest the Gary Ryan Blair 100-day challenge. You mentioned that on there, but you also just mentioned his name has just completely gone out of my head. The juggler who's just released his course.
Oh, Barry Friedman.
Yeah,
Barry's great. I did some coaching with Barry for a while, and he was part of the Raspini brothers.
Yeah,
probably, one of the top two juggling acts in America. Commercial sort of. They do trade shows and Guinness Book of Records world holders, and so he's a great guy, and it's a coaching program that he runs, and online there's weekly installments on that, and great course. But he's a very clue. He loves his marketing and online marketing and stuff. So I did about 6 months, I think, working on some promotional material. I've got these sort of one sheets.
Yeah.
Which that's what we worked on, just getting the message together and working on some ad copy and motivation stuff for me to actually get it done. So it was good. Outsourcing.
Is that the thing?
Yeah, it's like a lot of not. It's a problem a lot of magicians have. They don't get help when they need it, so
And they try to do
they
everything themselves, and
they try to, yeah, and that's a thing. It's a challenge that I have. I try and do everything. I'll learn how to use the software, or think I can write or think I can design and stuff. So I'm finally learning to pull other people in to help me do that stuff.
so I mean that's an interesting thing actually, because it is a problem people have, and I mean I think that one of the biggest issues people have with the outsourcing thing is it costs money initially, doesn't it? But it's actually
Yeah.
can actually be. I mean, I'm a terrible control freak with what I do. I mean, I do everything myself, and it drives me insane. So I mean, how have you learned? Have you just realised it's better to do it the other way? Is it?
Yeah, well, I think having a coach sort of drum it into you a little bit. So I don't know, with the recent stuff that the publications, we've got them proofread and stuff. Whereas in the past I've just done that myself, and
Yeah.
they had some horrendous mistakes in it. So, but I think it's also on the magic side as well as. One of my close personal friends is Raymond Crowe, and I think he's probably the best magician in Australia, and he's always had directors come in and help him with his show, and so few magicians do that.
Yeah, it's very
Get
true.
that in, yeah.
But I mean, have you over the years? I mean, you said about using the coaching. Have you sort of? I mean, I personally just asked one of my clients who set up multi-million-pound businesses to mentor me, because I felt I needed someone to kind of go, well, who wasn't involved in magic. I mean, have you done things like that in the past? Have you had business coaching and?
I'll tell you what. One of the things I've done, which I really recommend, and is like a mastermind group. Do you know the theory of the mastermind group? So you get 5 or 6 people who are at about the same level as you, but possibly not in competing businesses, and just get together once a month and sort of nut out some ideas with them. So it's a trusting sort of a group. The 2 groups that I've been involved with were organised through National Speakers Association, so they were all in the speaking business. But you could go in with your raw copy for a website or a promotional piece, and run it past them, or go in with a crisis and say, or an opportunity, and say, how would you guys help me with this? And they do. So fantastic.
And have you? I mean, do you think, because that's one of the issues with magicians, isn't it? We are, like you said, we do feed off each other quite a lot, and we tend to sort of. We kind of the gene pool gets shallower and shallower, doesn't it? If you just feed off other magicians, and so that idea about going out to other industries and other professions, and I mean, I think it's extremely valuable to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's like finding a singer, or say a comedian, or somebody else in the entertainment. Maybe a good DJ, or somebody who's kind of expanded their business or leveraged their business in a different way, and kind of tapping into them. But magicians in some ways don't collaborate. They're always a bit, about sharing stuff. So you got to get over that.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely. I mean, one of the dangers, however, of dealing with non-magicians, and I found this because I was in a business group, a sort of entrepreneurs group, and some guy who was total middle management, as far as I could tell. And his attitude to me when I was sort of talking was, well, drop your prices, and it just got my back up so much, in the sense that he clearly didn't understand the industry, that I was in, and so there is that danger. But I think the idea about setting yourself with comedians or musicians, or people within the entertainment or creative industries, I think that's a great idea, because those kind of masterminds groups, if it's all magicians, it's all magicians, and it ends up becoming people showing each other card tricks.
Yeah.
So I think that's very valuable. But So what's sort of on the, you know, where you've got 2012 planned out. You're on track.
I've got half the year planned out. I have a great client who's actually based in the UK. Who they're an international company, but they do seminars around the world. A very interesting business model, actually. They find a niche, and then they find people, CIOs or C-level executives, and they give them a free weekend away, and then they fund the event by getting sponsors who would like to talk to those people.
Right.
And so it's quite small. The groups are about 50 to 100 people max, and they do about 6 or 7 of those a year in Australia. So I'm the MC for those. So it's quite fun. And I've got a few cruises, and I've got a big MC assignment in New Zealand coming up in April, and a bit of a holiday at the same time.
Going back home.
Yeah, it's not home. I've lived in Australia longer than I've lived in New Zealand.
Right.
So, magic. I've got a couple of magic coach sort of things I'm working on.
Yeah. So you're still creating for the magic community as well. You're still putting those things out, and
yeah. There's a few things I'd like to do, but that's sort of on a back burner at the moment. I'm trying to work hard for a while, but yeah. So
excellent. So in a nutshell, as it were. I mean, because you've clearly you've had a kind of an extremely varied career, but you're obviously doing very well at what you do, and there's reasons for that. I mean, if you were to sort of, sit someone down and say, and not necessarily a newbie, but someone who was kind of in the business and looking for a way forward. I mean, what do you think there are sort of elements, there are keys to that? Do you think what would they be? What's the secret?
Mm-hmm. What's the secret? I it sounds corny, but thinking big is like magicians a lot of them limit themselves to what they can do. Most magicians don't charge enough.
Right, I agree with that one.
Yeah, it's and competing on price and stuff like that.
So it's just about having the big dreams is a good start.
Yeah, but sort of goal setting, I think, is part of the success. It's not dreams are no good unless you kind of define what you're going to try and do with them. How are you actually going to make it happen? So sitting down and plotting it out a bit.
What is it? A dream is just a goal without a deadline, isn't it? Is that the?
Yeah, that could be it.
that's the one.
Could be it.
Excellent stuff. And I've got one last question for you, actually.
All right.
Is there a light in your Alexander poster behind you, or is that just the sunshine? Is that cleverly lit?
Ooh. I think it's just a glimmer of light. It's got the third eye happening.
Nicely done.
Yeah. It's just how it is.
It's how it is.
Yeah, look, I don't have there's no secrets, Peter. There's no secrets.
There's no secrets. It's just hard work and.
Well, wasn't that Di Vernon's thing? There's no great secret. There's a great many little ones.
Right. Okay. And on that bombshell from the majority of the magic world. Thank you very much, Mr. Hyde. It's been lovely talking to you. It's been nice talking to you. Nice sort of meeting you, even if it is via Skype. So I've been following you for about 3 years, I think now. So it's been a pleasure.
Well, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. And if the people want more information, they can go to magiccoach.com.
A huge thank you to Timothy for talking to me. All the resources we talked about and other interviews like this can be found at www.magicstateofmind.com.